Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the bigger bowl games from this past weekend. Wanted to break them down really quickly, including that Cam Ward controversy, but wanted to get to this Sam Levitt thing that Anthony was talking about here. There's a world where that happens. I'd be a little bit surprised. I think him and Kenny Dillingham are like two peas in the pod. I think it just fits absolutely perfectly, but let's be honest. The transfer portal does not give us many answers, so it is very possible that that is something that could happen. There's a million things that go around right now. Some of them happen, some of them don't. I'll wait until after the game to get a better read on that. I'm sure some people have heard some things, but we'll know much more after that clock hits 0. I would assume he is staying in Arizona State. If he doesn't, and he does possibly look at Miami as an option, he can fit in that offense. There's no doubt about that. He's not going to give you, those crazy throws that Cam Ward gave you, but he is going to give you a little bit more quarterback run game. He will have to kind of adapt a little bit, Shane Dawson will, to what he does well, but overall, very, very talented kid, can fit into a lot of different systems, can make a ton of different athletic plays, so I think he could fit over there at Miami. I'd be a little bit surprised if he were to walk out of Arizona State right now just because it feels like the perfect fit for him, but at the end of the day, the transfer portal is wild. I'm not going to be saying anything definitively over the next little bit, so we'll see what happens there. If Miami does pick him up, I think it's a very talented guy that not only could be great in 2025, but in 2026 could really explode and become a fantastic player for them. So wouldn't be the worst fit in the world. We'll wait until that game finishes to see what happens there. But let's get to all the other bowl games, because there were a number of really, really good ones this past weekend, and there are some great ones leading up to these CFP games this week. So let's go ahead and jump into this, and let's talk about all the games that already happened. And I want to start with Kyle McCord. Huge shout out to Kyle McCord. Became the all-time ACC passing leader in a season. Remarkable season for that kid, and really for Syracuse overall. They get to 10 wins in the very first year of Fran Brown. I could not like that guy more. He is so much fun to watch. He's the right energy you need as a head coach, especially at a place like Syracuse. I think he's going to be there as long as he wants to be there. I'll put it that way. There will be plenty of places that will be calling him, especially next offseason, to see what he wants to do. If that Auburn job opens up, just watch out for him. Let's just put it that way for the time being. But overall, remarkable game from Syracuse, remarkable season, and really Kyle McCord just got all the haters off his back throughout this year. And then Arkansas gets a big-time win over Texas Tech. This was one that I really didn't expect. I thought Arkansas was going to struggle in this game with a lot of the guys transferring out. They played really good football. It was really, really awesome to watch these two. And I think when you look towards the offseason, two very much wild cards. I don't know what they're going to look like in 2025. Arkansas has lost a number of guys. Texas Tech has brought in a number of guys. It's going to be a toss-up. Both those teams are teams that I think could be dangerous, particularly Texas Tech in the Big 12, but overall going to be really interesting to watch what those teams do this offseason. Then you got UConn dominating North Carolina really throughout this day, and Bill Belichick has to have some questions. There's no doubt about that. But overall, I do think it's one of those things where take it for what it is. This is not going to be the team that lines up in August for UNC. There's almost no doubt about that. So overall, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that unfold. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a very different team. I wouldn't take that and just immediately say, oh, next year is going to stink for North Carolina. There's going to be a lot of players that are going to be walking out and in those doors over the next little bit. TCU gets a very comfortable win in this one. They dominated this game from the jump, and Josh Hoover led the way. Sonny Dykes feels like he has his quarterback, and I think we all know what it looks like when Sonny Dykes has his quarterback. We saw it with Max Duggan. We could see it again in 2025 with Josh Hoover. Really like that kid, and I think you put a couple more pieces behind him, shore up that defense just a little bit. This thing could get really interesting again down there in Fort Worth. And then Miami of Ohio just rolls over Colorado State. I thought this was going to be a defensive battle. It was not at all, and they had to put on for Snoop Dogg. I totally understand that. He was absolutely incredible on the call for this one, but overall, great year for Miami of Ohio, great year for Colorado State. Both these teams will be contenders in 2025, and Colorado State will be looking forward to the Pac-12 in 2026. So a lot of different things happening for those two schools. Hopefully Miami of Ohio and the MAC is staying safe for the time being, but Colorado State will be undergoing quite a bit of change over the next little bit. And then East Carolina wins that battle for North Carolina over NC State. It was one that NC State really did come back in, and then 86-yard touchdown run from Harris really kind of put this one away from Eastern Carolina. But tough scene at the end with that brawl. Hope everyone is okay there. Obviously something you never want to see, and something that we tend to see a couple of times throughout the college football year. Hopefully no one was injured. Saw the ref that had, the bloody nose and the bloody face. Hope he is more than fine at this point. I believe he is. I've seen different reports there, but overall, going into the offseason, I don't know what to make of NC State going forward. I think they're going to have to do a ton of work in the portal. I really like CJ Bailey, so maybe the quarterback position is handled. Otherwise, you got a lot of work to do, especially with Kevin Concepcion walking out the door. There's a lot of things that need to happen around there if they want to be successful going forward. But games coming up this week. We do have the battle for the yellow. We have Iowa against Missouri, going to be an incredible matchup here, and two teams that are going to be really interesting going into next year. Two teams that are going to look very, very different. Iowa's losing just about everyone on the back end of that defense. Missouri's losing just about every skill player that they have on that offense. So a lot of different things that will be changing for this team. Not a ton of opt-outs, but definitely a fair share here. Luther Burden will not go in this game. Brady Cook will go in this game for his final one at Missouri. No Caleb Johnson for Iowa or Jamari Harris. You will have Sebastian Castro. You will have a couple of the other guys on this team that are very talented that want to play their final game for their team. So you'll have plenty of talent on the field, no doubt about that. No Mookie Cooper as well from Missouri, so a lot of Theo Weiss, a lot of these younger guys kind of stepping up, which is always kind of cool to see. As you look forward to 2025, want to see a couple of those young players step up. But I think it's going to be a fun one. I think they're going to get after each other a little bit. I really like what Brendan Sullivan has brought to that Iowa offense. But without Caleb Johnson, I really can't trust Iowa to put many points on the board. I'm going to roll with the Tigers here. I'll roll with them to cover in this game, and I think Brady Cook leaves Columbia as a winner. Alabama-Michigan, the rematch from the Rose Bowl a year ago. This time it's in Orlando for the ReliaQuest Bowl. So a little bit of a step down. Let's just put it that way. And you will see a couple of opt-outs here, particularly on the Michigan side of the ball. It sounds like Jalen Milroe will go in this one, but I think they're kind of playing a little tongue-in-cheek, so we'll see what happens there. Maybe he plays for a half and then finds his way to the sideline to let Ty Simpson do his thing. But for Michigan, no Edwards, no Mullings, a ton of defenders that will not be playing in this game. And on the quarterback side, I don't think I'm alone thinking I would love to see Bryce Underwood start this game. I know you can't do that, but at the end of the day, I'd love to see number 19 trot out there with the number 1 offense, but it will be Davis Warren out there, and he has played relatively good football towards the back end of the season. Had a tough day against Ohio State, but that's just the reality of playing that Ohio State defense, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do. That Bama defense will be flying at him. I can almost promise you that. Michigan's missing a ton of guys on either side of the ball. Not a soul is going to be able to guard Ryan Williams except for the guy that's not going to be playing in Will Johnson. So I'll roll with the Tide. I do think Jordan Marshall is a player to watch for Michigan, going to be a very talented running back going into 2025, but I'll roll with the Tide right about now, and I'll roll with Jalen Milroe to get his final win in that jersey. Then you got Louisville, Washington. Really, really fun matchup here. Two teams that relatively under the radar this year have missed a couple of opportunities throughout the year to make this an incredible year. Washington falls in some really close games throughout this one. Louisville really wasn't all that far off from competing for an ACC title. Just had a couple of things go the wrong way in a couple of those games, particularly the SMU game. But overall, this will be a really interesting matchup. Damon Williams will give you a look into what 2025 will look like for Washington. Very talented kid with his legs. Definitely can make plenty of throws. Probably needs to take a little bit of a step forward in that respect, but going to be a very talented kid next year and cannot wait to see what he can do on this stage. And then for Louisville, it will not be Tyler Shuck at quarterback. He is going to move on to the NFL draft. Doesn't mean it's going to be Harrison Bailey. Very talented kid coming out of high school, bounced around a little bit to Tennessee and now at NC State, but very talented kid, very excited to see what he can do. But more importantly, they have Isaac Brown. And when you have Isaac Brown, you can do a lot of special things in the run game. So that'll probably be the guy you see the most, number 25 there. And then it's going to be a good one. Cannot wait for this one to get. I think it's going to be weird, wild, a little bit of inexperience at quarterback makes for some crazy football. Let's just be totally honest. But I think Louisville has the firepower at the running back position to take this one. I think the Cardinals might just roll in this game. Really like the Cardinals in this one, and I really like Isaac Brown to have a huge one. South Carolina, Illinois, one of the last ranked matchup that we will get in bowl season, going to be a really, really interesting one because the reality is when you have number 16 in Garden and Black there, it's going to be a fun game to watch. Lenora Sellers is absolutely appointment television at this point. If he wasn't this year for you, he better be in 2025 because he is as fun as it gets. And the other guy on the other side, Luke Altmaier, had an incredible year this year. He's going to be back for 2025, and Illinois fans love to hear that. Fantastic quarterback that absolutely can take that next step, and maybe they're the team that Indiana was this year. But it'll be awesome to watch these two teams go at it. I think Lenora Sellers will have a load to deal with. There's no doubt about that. He will have a lot on his shoulders in this game, and then they will be without Kyle Kennard, so Dylan Edwards will have a lot on his shoulders in that pass rush game, but I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be hotly contested. I think we will get some points in this game. Great cultures on both teams because not a ton of opt-outs here, but overall, I think they'll be in full tilt. I just got to go with Dylan Stewart and Lenora Sellers. I think those are the two most special athletes on the field. I'll roll with them to get this win. Baylor LSU, two teams that are looking at 2025 and saying, why not us? Maybe we can make a little bit of a run at that CFP, at that conference championship, because you look at the way that Baylor finished this season with Sawyer Robertson, it's been really incredible to watch. He's been a huge, huge piece for them, and he will be back for 2025. So you have a little bit of stability there, as does LSU. Garrett Nussmeier will be back for 2025. Now, not a lot of other people will be back around him. Lost both offensive tackles in this game. No Kyron Lacey in this game. More players on the defensive side of the ball that have entered the portal. A lot of different things that are going to have to fall into place for LSU in this game, and a lot of scrambling going on right now to figure out how they're going to fall into place. But overall, I think LSU can make a number of plays in this game. I think they're going to be able to push the ball downfield and take advantage of some of the athletic ability that they do have, but I really like Sawyer Robertson. I'm not sure that you won't have a couple of mistakes, especially with the O-line issues. I think Garrett Nussmeier will give them a couple of possessions, and I think Baylor will take full advantage. I'll take Baylor to win this one and maybe be a really dangerous team in 2025. And then you do have the one on Thursday after all the CFP quarterfinal games. Duke against Ole Miss, two teams that Duke had an incredible year. A lot of stuff has fallen apart since then. Malik Murphy has walked out the door. I don't want to say was pushed, was encouraged to walk out the door. I'll put it that way for the time being. But at the end of the day, Duke is going to be starting a different quarterback this time around. I assume it will be Grayson Loftus in this game, had played in the prior year, so that'll be an interesting thing to watch. For Ole Miss, pretty much everyone's playing, which is really remarkable. Huge shout out to Lane Kiffin because let's be honest, when we saw this team constructed, I think a lot of us thought that if they were playing in one of these bowl games, a lot of these guys weren't going to go. So incredible to see all of those guys going, at least most of those guys. They could be a couple of opt-outs here and there with Trey Harris, Walter Nolan. We'll see what happens there. But overall, it's going to be really, really awesome to watch those guys get on the field one more time as Ole Miss Rebels, and I think Jackson Dart's going to put on a show. I think it's going to be an absolute dominating performance. I think they're still pretty mad about that selection committee stuff, and I think they'll take care of business here. So it'll be incredible to watch what this game has, and definitely will be one I cannot wait for. And before we get out of this one, I want to make sure I answer some of these questions that Anthony has over here. Yeah, I do think some of the Hurricane fans, you want to see him out there. You want to see number one, the guy that led you this far, that's guy that's been the leader of this team for the entire year. You want to see him out there, and I think all of us did. But at the end of the day, I can't even fathom what it's like to make a decision like that. So I'm not here to throw stones at the kid. I'm not here to attack him and say he made absolutely the wrong decision. It's his decision to make. I fully support whatever he does. And then when you look at the future, or excuse me, do you think we see the future at quarterback later in the game for Iowa? That is an interesting question. I think there's a lot of different. It's a tightrope walk. Whenever you have, you want to finish the season strong, you want to give love to the seniors, to the veterans on your team, but you also got to see what you have in 2025. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple of quarterback changes in this thing, kind of played around with some different things, especially with these offenses kind of changing a lot next year. Wouldn't be surprised by that by any means. And Sawyer Robertson, he's so much fun. He is a mobile quarterback. He's absolutely a guy that can scoot pretty good. He is going to be a huge player in 2025. I really think Baylor is one of those teams that could kind of be in the situation that maybe a BYU was this year, or maybe SMU was this year, just in the Big 12. They're a very talented team, very well coached, and I think Sawyer Robertson has a lot of juice. I think he's a fantastic quarterback and could very well be one of the best quarterbacks in that conference next year. And then for Ole Miss, how long do you think Jackson Dart plays? I would say a half. I think that's probably fair to say. I think a half, kind of follow the Cam Ward way of things. Play a half, let Austin Simmons get in there, because I do think that's the quarterback for them next year. Definitely want to see him play out a full half. So that's kind of my inkling there. We'll see what happens. He's obviously a guy that would love to play every single snap in this game, but I think him and Lane Kiffin have a plan in place. I expect to see Austin Simmons pretty consistently throughout this game. So it'll be fun to watch all of that unfold. A lot of different dynamics in these bowl games now, but let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we got to talk about the transfer portal. There's a ton of stuff happening, a couple of commitments as this thing closed, a couple of guys that jumped in at the last moment, and a couple of people that can still jump in after this. We'll break it all down right after this, so stick with us.